Well, a very good morning to you if you're joining us from the United Arab Emirates and the region today. And for those of us who are joining from Australia, a very good afternoon. It is indeed a very large pleasure on my part. Indeed, it is a privilege to be able to welcome you to this very special four-part series over the next 4 weeks. Just a couple of housekeeping. You'll notice that there's a poll on your screen. Now, this poll is very important for us among the organisations who have come together today to be able to identify how we can best work with you to help to build the connection between Australia and the United Arab Emirates. So please take your time to fill that out. You'll also notice at the bottom of your screen the Q&A function. Now, with today's webinar, we're going to be waiting till the end of the webinar series to be able to present your questions to our panelists. So that will happen in the last half an hour of the program. So please feel free throughout the entirety of today's webinar to send through those questions, and we will be getting to those later on. But without any further ado, let's take a look at where we're going today. And this is a very, very important topic because, of course, COVID-19 is affecting everybody all across the world. So how are we thinking differently? And it's so important that we build these connections and these relationships with one another in a deeper, more meaningful way. So welcome to the Dubai FDI Advantage webinar series, a joint initiative between the Australia Arab Chamber of Commerce and Industry, fondly known as AACCI, the Australian Business Council of Dubai, and Dubai FDI. I am Jessica Swan. I'm the National Board Secretary for AACCI and the National Secretariat, and it's my pleasure to be your MC for today's webinar. Her Excellency Mariam bint Mohammed Al Muhairi, the Minister of State for Food Security, in her words, she said, increasing local food production is a trend imposed on us by various challenges in order to secure sustainable food for everyone living on the land of the United Arab Emirates, especially in times of emergency and crises. For us, here in Australia, the Australian government's focus is firmly on diversification of international export markets. Our Agricultural Minister, David Littleproud, he's explicitly mentioned the Gulf states, and the Australian Minister for Trade, Simon Birmingham, has mentioned the Middle East more widely. In our four-part series over the next 4 weeks, we're going to be exploring very important subjects with some very high-profile guests whose expertise span agribusiness, logistics, health, and technology. Today, we start our series with a focus on agribusiness, and our panelists joining us come from a broad foray from the United Arab Emirates, and it is indeed a pleasure. We'll be welcoming His Excellency Fahad Al Gagawi, the CEO of Dubai FDI, His Excellency Saeed Al Awadi, the CEO of Dubai Exports, Ms. Hanan Ali Dawood, the head of Food Products Registration and Evaluation for Dubai Municipality, will be joining us. And we have from the Dubai Multi-Commodities Centre Authority, Mr. James Bernard, the head of corporate sales. The Jebel Ali Free Zone, Mr. Faisal Jassim, the Senior Manager of Sales, will be joining us, Mr. Al Hinton, Senior Advisor with Dubai FDI, and Mr. Ravi Mirale, the Vice President, Cargo, Commercial Far East and Australasia from Emirates Sky Cargo, will be joining us, and indeed a very good friend of our chamber, and that is Carl Dowling, the Chairman of the Australian Business Council of Dubai, will also be joining us today. I would like now, however, to welcome His Excellency Mr. Ian Halliday, Australian Consul General Dubai and General Manager Middle East, Africa and Turkey, to provide our welcome address.
Hi, Jess, and good morning, everybody, and good afternoon if you're in Australia. It's certainly a great honour to be asked to open this inaugural event, and it's a very welcome joint initiative and collaboration between AACCI, ABCD and Dubai FDI, and I think this being the first of 4 sessions, I do hope those that are participating are going to get a lot of value out of it. I'd certainly also like to welcome our VIP panellists, His Excellency Mr.
Thank you.
Fahad Al Gagawi, CEO of Dubai FDI, and His Excellency Mr. Saeed Al Awadi. And also thank the participating organisations, Dubai Municipality, Dubai DMCC, Jebel Ali Jabsa, Emirates Sky Cargo, and Dubai FDI. As Jessica said, during COVID, it's certainly been a challenging time across the food and agri sector, as we know, in many countries, and certainly in the UAE and Dubai, particularly from a hospitality and a food service sector, which largely have been closed down for a number of months now. But we are fortunate to start to see the economy reopening. But it's still a very challenging time for that sector, and very challenging for many Australian exporters of high quality food products. But I think the retail sector and certainly home delivery have really done exceptionally well across the UAE over the COVID period. I certainly think Dubai does present enormous potential to many Australian businesses in the agribusiness and food sectors. Both it has in the past and will continue to do so. And I think we also need to remember too that Dubai is an important regional hub, with many foodstuffs coming through Dubai and then being re-exported across the entire MEA region. I first came to this region about just over 20 years ago, selling dairy products, and I've certainly seen enormous growth over that time, and I certainly see enormous potential for many years to come, particularly when you've got such a young demographic, when over 65% of the population base is less than 25 to 30 years old. And when I look at across the whole Middle East and Africa region, we're going to see a population base go from about 2 billion people to well over 3 billion people over the next 20 to 30 years. Australia's food and export industry stands at just over 40 billion a year, making it the third largest export industry after iron ore and coal. And as a nation, we are very globally competitive in beef, wheat, dairy, seafood, horticulture and wine, all of which we have very strong export markets. And the food and agriculture sector in Australia consists of over 100,000 growers, 5,000 processors, and a capacity to feed well over 60 million people, but we only have a population of 25. So food and agribusiness is a large part of the Australian economy, and our values stand in growing quality, sustainable, innovative and unique products. As a region, the MEA region it represents for Australia about 3.3 billion Australian dollars worth of exports coming into the UAE. So we're about the 13th largest export market. And the UAE is a very strong trading partner, particularly in chilled meat, horticulture, cereals and dairy. And there has been a long and strong history between Australia and the UAE, and particularly in Dubai, in regards to food and the agri sector. And apart from exports, Australia also is at the forefront of the global push towards Agri 4.0. And Australia is one of the leading countries addressing global trends and challenges. It has a very strong track record of innovation in both farming systems and food processing. It has a thriving ag tech and food tech sector, and it definitely has world-class research. And both the UAE and Australia have similar climatic challenges. So there are a lot of synergies on offer between Australia and Dubai and the UAE. And the Australian government with commercial enterprises have also been working very closely and very strongly with the UAE government on its food security strategy. And Jessica mentioned before, under the leadership of Minister Marian Al-Mahari, we've been working as to how Australia can assist the UAE and Dubai really implement the food security strategy, which I think across most countries in the GCC region, food security now, certainly as a result of COVID, has become much more amplified. I think the key objectives of the food security strategy for the UAE really is to position the UAE as one of the world's top 10 food secure nations, develop a regional hub for research and innovation with global partners, enhance local production, develop international partnerships to diversify food sources, activate legislation and policies that contribute to improving nutrition, reducing food waste, and facilitate business setups to startups in ag tech. And I think Australia is well positioned to address these goals and aspirations. And in recent times, we have already had success in showcasing solution-based technologies in the areas of aquaculture, closed and vertical farming systems, food nutrition and policy, sustained diverse crop management, climate change and water management modelling, and development of research and development knowledge, and development of a research and development knowledge hub. So just in conclusion, as I said earlier, there has historically been a very strong relationship between Australia and Dubai in the food and agribusiness sector. The ongoing COVID issue has thrown up some very interesting challenges for us all, but also opportunities, with Australian businesses needing to further diversify the markets that they're operating within. And that's certainly, I know a number of Australian businesses are looking more at Dubai and the Middle East region, and food security being so much more amplified than ever before from a GCC perspective. And I do believe these two issues will drive further growth opportunities and strengthen the relationship between Australia and Dubai. The Australian government, through Austrade, the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade and the Department of Ag, are here on the ground in Dubai and across the region to further help develop the relationships. And we also have some wonderful partners in AACCI, ABCD in Dubai, and AusBG in Abu Dhabi, Dubai FDI. A number of Australian state-based trade commissioners are also based here, and we also have very strong commercial partners to help realise everybody's aspirations. And I couldn't close without mentioning Expo 2020, which is now starting in October next year. I think this will be such a wonderful global platform to showcase our credentials, our knowledge, our capability on a world stage, and further enhance the relationship between Australia and Dubai and the UAE, and also showcase the wonderful opportunities across this whole region. So thanks very much once again for the opportunity to say a few words. I wish you every continued success, and I hope you enjoy the seminar today. Thank you.
His Excellency Ian Halliday there with our welcome speech. Thank you so much, Your Excellency. 2/3 of the world's population live within an 8-hour flight of Dubai, with 1/3 living within a 4-hour flight. Now that makes Dubai and the United Arab Emirates a very attractive destination for business and investment. A perfect person to speak with us about this is the CEO of Dubai FDI, Saadet Fahad Al-Gagawi. Welcome to today's webinar.
Hello, good afternoon to everyone, and good day to Australians. And first, it's a pleasure for all of us here as Dubai team to connect with Australia again. And it's quite assuring too that we are continuing to meet and discuss with future amid this, such, crisis we're having globally. First of all, thank you to AACCI and Dubai Business or Australian Business Council in Dubai for their support and assistance into bringing the first of 4 different series between Dubai and Australia. We are here really keen, as we had an Australian mission, but we had to postpone it, but the interest is still there. So we said, we will never, forget about it. We have to do something where there is an interest. We can always support businesses more actually in such times. Together in UAE and Australia, we have built an exemplary partnership over the past few decades. Dubai and UAE remains Australia's largest trading partner in the Middle East, with non-oil trade between the two countries almost close to $4 billion in Australian dollars. Australian cities are well connected with UAE, over almost 100 flights per week between the two countries. UAE is the home of almost 25,000 Australians and over 350 different companies and different activities, including construction, finance, professional services, tourism, as well as education. UAE also have invested in Australia, including in agri-business, tourism, healthcare, and a few other sectors. We, at the same time, are persistent and to focus on economic diversification, as well as the vision to grow into knowledge economy. And one of the best, to be one of the best in our region and among the best in the world. Have opened actually a remarkable such such open and knowledge economy have opened a remarkable opportunities for UAE to look into ideas, enterprises, and people from all over the world. It is a unique feature of the economy of UAE, and its openness, its resilience, and have seen the country maintaining growth and international look through global downturns and setbacks. Dubai, for example, has continued to strengthen its advantage as one of the most efficient gateways on global level, as we are a global trade to connect, global trade destination to connect to 2.4 billion consumer market in the Indian subcontinent, Middle East, North and East Africa, as well as spillover into some CIS countries. We believe that in every crisis, there is an opportunity and to successfully test new approaches, as well as launch initiatives to enhance competitiveness and ensure sustainable growth for businesses. The prevailing pandemic crisis have been, although different in the size and character, but no different in what people will do to overcome it and what we expect of result after that. As the world moves into lockdown mode following the crisis, Dubai and UAE moved swiftly to ensure the healthcare system to everyone are in the country, living there or visiting, including people who got locked down in their hotels. It was the well-being of human before anything else in such times. And at the same time, simultaneously, a series of support measures and technology solutions have been ensured to minimal interruption to business and life. Nevertheless, we know there will be lost in different ways and job opportunities like any other economy in the world. But we believe by trying to make sure to, while we are maintaining the health part of this time, we also try to bring up and open up the business activities to minimize the other side of the effect on people and families. There have been a lot of different packages from the government and stimulus support, as well as the free zones who in Dubai offered different also scheme packages to support businesses. The efficiency and connectivity of Dubai offering a big distribution hub for and being also a regional hub for almost 60% of the global 1,000 or Fortune 1,000 companies have always helped us to maintain where we are and trying to navigate the such times really with multinationals who are here among us. Looking forward, we see new vast opportunities for businesses in UAE and Dubai throughout the pandemic crisis, through many different crises we came across. There have been always so many difficult times, but it's about also the resilience of a system that can bring itself between government, private, and everyone living in this country to collectively to bring up a resolution and different support to the businesses. The fresh product, as we speak, is as well as food manufacturing, processing, and packaging sector are in need on a remarkable growth curve. With our renewed emphasis on food security, we are keen into bringing Australian expertise and investment into these sectors. Growing population of diverse taste, 200 nationalities living in Dubai only, and the access of markets around us, comprehensive support and services, as well as advanced facilities for transportation, storage, distribution, makes Dubai the right platform for Australian agribusiness to utilize. Dubai Multi-Commodities, for example, has a dedicated agro hub with focusing on grains and offering finance trade facility, also a food trade group to encourage industry growth. Food and beverage is also one of the 6 priority subsector in Dubai industrial strategy, and we look at it very seriously. I believe the government of UAE across the federal and the the local government have invested almost 150 billion the last 10 years in food security, different implementation and investment. And we think there is a more room for growth here with our friends in Australia. We believe that a significant opportunity is ahead of us to build a game-changing partnership and develop an innovative solution to enhance the productivity and ensure food security is really paying off to not only to UAE, but also to the region around us. I invite you to explore the UAE and Dubai and look forward to welcome you in Dubai very soon. And thank you again for everyone participating here and whoever joined us in this lovely morning in Dubai and great afternoon in Australia. Thank you.
Shukran jazilan. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Fahad El-Gagawi, the CEO of Dubai FDI, joining us there. Now, many distributors and retail chains operate in the wider region, and they use the United Arab Emirates as a base for re-exports, which offers additional sales opportunities to suppliers. To talk with us more about exports, I'd like to welcome His Excellency, the CEO of Dubai Exports, Said Al-Awadi.
Hi, thank you, Jessica. I like your Arabic, Sa'adat.
Shukran jazilan.
First of all, thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to speak. Thank you, Your Excellency and Holiday. Thank you, Fahad Al-Gagawi, and the rest of the team. Our relationship, UAE and Australia, started with the inception of Dubai Export itself. We built this organization through Australian experts, actually, consultants, and cooperation with Australia. So thank you very much for all the Australians. Second, if you want to talk about trade, I mean, all of you know that Dubai is a hub for the region, and what was planned for Dubai Export is to connect the world, especially countries like Australia, New Zealand, or Latin America, to the Middle East and North Africa. So the connectivity, the facilities, the airports, the ports, all these was essential to make Dubai as a hub. From the 2019 figures and previous years, the figures was good. I mean, 1.3 trillion dirhams, around 400 billion US dollar for the last 3 years, 2018, 17, and 16. So it was somehow stable. Actually, 2019 was a little bit better, around 5.7% increase. And everything was going very, very, very good. The government of Dubai, headed by Sheikh Mohammed, actually announced what we want for the next 50 years of the UAE life. So the first announcement was to increase the trade to 2 trillion in 5 years. So we started working on that, and from 1.3 to 2 trillion. It is too much optimistic, but we planned everything. But unfortunately, the COVID-19 came in the middle, and things changed. Like what Fahad said, with every challenges, there is always opportunity. So we sat down again, government of Dubai, and start to revise our strategies. And of course, we started with food and beverage, like Fahad said, with health and hygiene, and with medical and support. So we have 3 committees working in the UAE level. We as Dubai is part of it. One is the Food Security Higher Committee. Second is the Medical and Hygiene Security. And the last is manufacturing as a whole. Okay? So 3 ministries and 3 committees. We during this couple of months, we achieved very stable, manufacturing plus import and export security for these 3 sectors. I think things is under control, even with the COVID-19. The government and the private sectors in Dubai, they started going back to office in stages, started with 30% this week, 50%. By next week, we will go all 100%, of course, with all the protections and social distancing. That's in summary my points with what we are doing in Dubai. And again, thank you very much for the invitation to speak. Thank you.
Your Excellency, thank you very much for joining us today. It is indeed a pleasure to have had you joining our webinar. Thank you so much for all of that enriching information that you're sharing there. The GCC market, it's gradually emerging as a major food processing and re-export destination. To talk with us about Dubai Municipality's role in this respect is Ms. Hanan Ali Dawood, the Head of Food Products Registration and Evaluation. Ms. Ali Dawood, very warm welcome to the program.
Hello, good morning, everyone, and good afternoon for those in Australia. First of all, thank you for the invitation to present about the processes followed by Dubai Municipality in import and re-export. So my presentation would be very brief. It would just take you through the main information and aspects that traders need to know before they think about importing food into Dubai. So as an introduction, I would like to introduce you to how does the Food Safety Department work in Dubai. If I can have the next slide, please. So basically, we've got 4 departments. We've got a department, the Food Trade Department, that manages food trade, facilitates import and export activities while ensuring that the highest level of safety are followed. We've got inspection services conducted routinely to all food establishments within the Emirate of Dubai and ensure that they adhere to the safety guidelines as written in the Dubai Food Code. We also issue permits for temporary and permanent food permits, such as Global Village or any food festival that happens in Dubai, in addition to conducting food-related studies and compliance of labels with regional regulations. So basically, any new trader or food importer who would like to import food from abroad, or let's say from Australia into Dubai. So the first step is to ensure that the trader has a UAE-based valid trade license. This trade license could be either issued from an onshore government authority or even from a free zone authority. So you've got that facility open. The second step would be that the company conducts the registration on the Dubai Municipality website to ensure that they can get access to all food import and re-export services. The third step would be to ensure that all food items are registered. So any food item which you would like to import, it is very important that these details are there on our database to ensure that at the time of import, there are no delays happening, because we ensure that all information are there before import. There's just one point to note here, that the registration does not actually mean approval. It's just a data entry for import purposes. That takes us to our fourth step, which is assessing food labels. This is a very critical step and we encourage all companies to do it. This is to ensure that the labels which are coming in from abroad are compliant with the UAE standards and regulations, to ensure that contraventions are kept to a minimum and that shipments could be released as soon as possible. After you've done the registration and the label assessment, you could go ahead and prepare your import documents, such as the health certificate and the packing list. If the product is a meat-based product and you will require a halal certificate, you need to ensure that the halal certificate is in there. Any other claims on the product, such as organic claims or non-GMO claims, also need to have valid certifications with them. After all the formalities and the documents are available, once the shipment arrives, we inspect them at the port and we take an action on that shipment. Next slide, please. To give you an overview of how many consignments we receive per month. So we've got four different outlets. So from airports, we received around 12,000 consignments per month. From our seaports, we've got 12,600 consignments, and that's our biggest input of food containers, especially from Jebel Ali port. From our land ports, we've got around 6,000 consignments, and our DIP and follow-up, which is the deferred inspection unit, and the follow-up unit, they inspect more than 3,000 shipments per month. Next slide. So once the shipment reaches the ports here in Dubai, we carry out an inspection at port, which is called the initial inspection. And then the shipment is transferred to the customer's warehouse within the Emirate of Dubai to conduct a thorough inspection, after which the verdict is given on the system. To make the process easier, all our processes is done online. There is no paper transactions happening. All document upload, follow-ups, everything is done online through the federal system for food import and re-export, which is called the ZAT system. Next slide, please. Just to give an overview of the different or the imported food from Australia into Dubai in the last 3 years. So we see there's a slight downward trends in the total imported containers, as well as in total number of imported items. But basically they're within a specific range, not very concerning, but something which is good to have a look at. Next slide. And the biggest group of food products being imported from Dubai are the pulses, seeds, nuts, and products. Second group being the vegetables and products, and then the third ranked or the third rank of food group is meat and poultry and products. So these are basically just some statistics concerning Australian products coming into Dubai. Next slide. In regards to permits, just to give you an overview, we've got two types of food-related business activities. We've got permanent permits, such as business layouts and small home enterprises, as well as temporary permits, such as if you've got a specific event, which is less than 3 months, you've got food kiosk, you want to apply for a permit for a food truck or a vending machine. Again, we've got a dedicated online system to accept these requests from the customer end, process these requests, and issue them within 1 working day. So even if you are not in Dubai, anywhere in the world, as long as you've got access to internet, you can apply for any of our food services. And in case you have any questions or any other queries, you could contact us on the 2 emails which are there on the screen, as well as address any questions to me at the end of the presentation. And thank you very much.
Ms. Hanan Ali Dawood, the head of the Food Products Registration and Evaluation with Dubai Municipality, thank you so much for joining our panel today. If you've just joined us on today's webinar, this is the first in a 4-part series of the Dubai FDI Advantage series, where we're looking at some of the most important export sectors between Australia and the United Arab Emirates. Now, Dubai has been identified as the commercial capital of the Middle East, and it's ranked 15th globally. It's a business environment where over 60% of the Fortune 500 countries call their regional home. Joining us next is Mr. James Bernard. He's the Head of Corporate Sales with the Dubai Multi-Commodities Centre Authority, fondly known as the DMCC. Welcome, James, to the webinar.
Thanks, Jessica. Good day to everyone. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for having DMCC. So could I have the next slide, please? And the next slide as well, thanks. So DMCC is a government authority. So we started out in 2002, and we are a government authority for DMCC Free Zone. And our mandate is, and has been from the beginning, to create commodity trade flow through Dubai. So first and foremost, as I said, we are a regulator and master developer of the DMCC Free Zone, but we also like to say that we are a trade facilitator, which you'll see as we go through the slides. And we have various products and services that we provide across different industry sectors, including the agri sector, food and agri sector, which we'll get on. Our slogan is made for trade, as you'll see also as we go forward. Next slide, please. So DMCC is split into three different parts. We have the free zone, where we set up businesses, we license businesses, register them, issue visas, supply property options to all the member companies. We also have a property arm, which has developed the entire DMCC free zone, the Jumeirah Lake Towers, which is part of the new Dubai. We have sales and leasing options through this property department as well, and a new development that we're building called Uptown Dubai as well. And the third part is trade enablers, which is our finance and commodity services department, where we have different platforms and storage facilities. You'll see as we go through. And this is all encapsulated in a very good corporate governance, compliance, regulatory environment that DMCC is well known for. Next slide, please. So just a brief on what a free zone is, because there's various different special economic zones out there. Most Dubai free zones offer the similar sort of basic infrastructure and packages, which is 0% income tax, 100% business ownership, and 100% repatriation of all capital and profits. Saying 0% income tax is very important. DMCC, the UAE has various dual taxation agreements with over 100 different countries around the world. So it's a good, definite positive USP for companies who are coming in and want to have a dual company subsidiary set up. Thanks. Next slide, please. So some of the benefits that DMCC offers that I put in different orders of priority. I try and capture a range here, but mainly I hear that DMCC's reputation and our brand is definitely up there at the top. It really helps to be connected to a DMCC and have the reputation that we have within the different commodity sectors out there, including the food and agri industry, and your peers that will be DMCC members also. Also, I mean, that's backed up by our award that we've won for the past 5 years by the Financial Times FDI Group for the best free zone in the world for SMEs and general categories as well. We're also a great location in Dubai, opposite Dubai Marina, and one of the benefits of being in DMCC also is the connectivity that we give businesses. We put a lot of emphasis in connecting our businesses to make sure that companies come in and they may have partners and trade companies that they can deal with straight away. Next slide, please. So a few figures just to sort of set the scene of DMCC. We have we have member companies from around 170 different countries, different nationalities. We have around 17,000 companies now with us, with about 60,000 employees. And in our free zone, there's about 100,000 people living and working at any one time. And all of the services within the free zone are made up around one park and 3 lakes. And we have hotels, retail, residential, and commercial. We also have freehold property in the free zone that you can purchase as well. Next slide, please. So, as I mentioned earlier, one of the advantages of DMCC, we connect our businesses. We have various different networking programs. We have different business clubs. So we have the food trade group, as Fahad mentioned earlier. We have the Dubai Maritime Club. We have the Energy Club. So we're very focused on different energy sectors, and that's where you can meet other business members in the free zone. We also have different incubators and accelerators throughout the free zone, and we do different publications based on different sectors as well, like gold, diamonds, agri, and various other sectors as well, where you can find information. Next slide, please. This is a representation of where our member companies come from. So you can see India is a big component, United Kingdom, Egypt, Lebanon. This is a sort of moving target of ours, and this changes over the years, but we'll go on to the Australian representation of our member companies as well in a few slides. Next slide, please. Some of the global brands that DMCC have member companies are represented there. You can see very well-known names from across really diverse set of business sectors and industry sectors. Next slide, please. So here I've put a slide which looks at the food and agri sector in particular, and you can see that we have around 1,355 member companies from the food and agri sector. We have 184 Australian companies and 352 Australian employees working for those companies. As we look at the different key sectors, this particular sector, we offer quite a few different offerings. We're home to the Food Trade Group, which we developed, we'll talk about in a minute. We're home to the India UAE Agri Association and the Global Pulse Confederation, who we do a lot of work with over the years. Each year we represent them in the different countries where they are. Actually, 2020 they were meant to be in Dubai, so hopefully their annual event will be next year. Next slide, please. So this is really sort of an important slide for us. As you know, DMCC is synonymous with diamonds and gold. One of the things that we like to do is to connect marketplaces and develop marketplaces, which we have done in the gold sector over the years. You can see the market value there is $40 billion, and diamonds is near to $30 billion. So both these industries have been nurtured and brought, and all the different parts of the business. So we provide gold and diamond vaults, we provide trading floors, we supply hedging facilities for these commodities. We provide the whole sales and marketing and networking platforms that are required for these. And over the years, we've developed this into different areas, which I'll go through in turn. But as you can see there, we've now moved on to tea, onto coffee, and onto agro in general. So tea has become a large part of what we do, and our tea facility, which I have a slide on later, makes Dubai one of the largest re-exporter of tea in the world. Next slide, please. So here you can see DMCC offers a wide range of innovative trade platforms, which have helped to put Dubai on the map across a number of key sectors. And we're continuously striving to help different industries grow in these sectors and across different sectors where we see that we can add value, and added value can be placed on different sectors by bringing these goods through Dubai in general. So DGCX, just briefly, is a derivatives exchange where you can hedge different currencies, different commodities. We also have the Dubai Diamond Exchange, which was integral in the expansion of the diamond industry and putting Dubai on as one of the leading centers of diamonds in the world, if not the leading. It's on the way to be the leading diamond center of the world. We have Trade Flow, which is our commodity collateralization platform, whereby you can gain finance for your commodities that are either in warehouse or on greenfield sites. We have our tea center, which I'll go into in a little bit in the next slide, but it handles over 45 million kilos of tea a year. And we have over 100 brands now using the facility. And then we have the DMCC Coffee Center as well, which is a new addition to the DMCC facilities that we offer. Next slide, please. So the Coffee Center we launched in February 2019, and it really is to connect the fast growing and high value consumer market in the Middle East to Europe, to the producing nations such as Ethiopia, India, Indonesia, Uganda, Vietnam, the list goes on. So the center offers logistical support and services that connect coffee producers to buyers. And its core services include warehousing, roasting, packaging, and more specialized offering such as coffee tasting and barista training. It also includes trading opportunities that will put DMCC and Dubai on the map for the coffee trading center of the Middle East. We're really excited about this. Next slide, please. So the tea center, as Fahad mentioned earlier, also is a real great success story. It has capacity to store up to 5,000 tons of tea, which is equivalent to the Saudi annual consumption. So it's a big center. It's been very successful. I think now that it's been in use for quite a long time, it boasts to be the largest re-exporter of tea, or Dubai puts UAE as the largest re-exporter of tea in the world now. It's a storage facility, but it also has packaging, blending, labeling facilities. And through this, you can also get trade finance on the tea that comes through. And it's as Dubai is an independent and not a grower of tea as well, it's a great facility where countries can come in and blend their different varieties of tea together. Next slide, please. So I noticed that one of the questions that came in was regarding blockchain. I just wanted to put in this last slide, which is that DMCC has recently introduced Crypto Valley, which is our blockchain distributed ledger technology environment that we have for Dubai. And this is an incubator accelerator. And we'll also be looking at agri-tech. We'll be looking at trade flows, we'll be looking at shipping and warehousing solutions through blockchain distributed ledger technology. We're working with various authorities on this at Dubai Future Foundation as well. So Dubai is very, very advanced in this sector, and we're going to be announcing quite a lot in the coming months on this as well. I thought it important to mention as trade flows are really being disrupted by digitalization, innovation, and blockchain. Next slide, thanks. So it's important to mention also that DMCC has realized that the trading environment out there is pretty hostile. There's a lot of injured companies, and we're trying to do our bit to support. So we've reduced our license renewal prices by 30%. We've put everything online so that companies don't actually have to come to the building to renew, to set up new companies. We have offers up to 70% reduction on our setup prices for new companies that are interested to join. And we can set up those companies completely digitally online so you don't have to travel. Next slide, please. I think this is the final. Yep, that's done. Thank you very much for your time. And if you have any questions, I look forward to receiving them.
That's James Menard. James, thank you so much for joining us on today's webinar. James is the Head of Corporate Sales with the Dubai Multi-Commodities Centre Authority, formerly known as the DMCC. I found it very interesting, some of what James was saying there, because certainly here at the Australia Arab Chamber of Commerce and Industry, we've been receiving a number of phone calls. As many would know, right across the world, there's been some significant disruptions in the export trade between Australia and China of recent times, barley, meat, and of course some changes to the rules around iron ore exports. So as a result of that, we've actually been receiving some very interesting phone calls that indicate that some of the information that is being presented today, indeed, hopefully all the information that's being presented today would indeed be very attractive to some of those people who I trust would be joining us. The idea that there would be 70% discounts on setting up businesses and ideas such as this, I think would be a significant carrot, I would imagine. Now, Dubai has invested heavily in logistics with one of the world's largest airlines, of course, and the 9th biggest deep water seaport. Now, the Jebel Ali Free Zone is one of the world's largest free zones. And very interestingly, in February of this year, the UAE authorities discovered they announced a gas discovery. Now, this is a very significant gas discovery. In fact, Bloomberg, I think, on a rare occasion used the word massive to describe it. Now, to put things in perspective, according to Bloomberg, the Jebel Ali Reservoir has around 80 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. So there's certainly some very, very interesting developments happening in the United Arab Emirates at the moment. But of course, to talk with us about the Jebel Ali Free Zone, it is indeed a pleasure to welcome Mr. Faisal Jassim, who is the Senior Manager of Sales with the Jebel Ali Free Zone. Welcome to today's webinar.
Thank you so much, Jessica. It's great to be here. Good afternoon to all my colleagues in Australia, and good morning to all my colleagues in Dubai. Jessica, you touched on a very important point when you said with regard to the current situation with Australia, and I believe with regard to the trade with China. This is, almost like a chapter 2. So we've seen it earlier as well with regard to the US and China in the last year or two. And this is where JAFZA and the Jebel Ali port was also very integral in terms of that. So when clients do think of re-strategizing or rethinking their supply chains and value chains, we are at the top of the consideration when it comes to that. And I will walk through this, the slides and just give you a brief as to why. So when we talk about the Jebel Ali Free Zone, we talk about the Jebel Ali port. Can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah, so we are in approximately, so when you talk about DP World, Dubai Ports World, we're in approximately 40 countries in the world with almost 80 ports and terminals across the world. Now, we started off as port operators, however, we branched off and really tried to go into other fields as well, such as free zone operators, such as logistical operators, etc. The reason is because we really wanted to bring, the whole value chain together under one roof, really, and under one management. So that when we go to clients and we talk to them, we really add value to them and we understand them in their totality. So when a client comes to me today, I don't just look at them in terms of a free zone, because when you boil down a free zone, it's really a licensing authority and landlord. So I'm not just looking at it from a rent perspective and from a fees perspective, but I'm really looking at it in terms of how can I add value to the client? The client is with me today. How can I increase his container volumes? How can I increase their trade volumes, etc.? So this is where we all bring it in together, and this is where we're known as, and we like to think of ourselves as, global trade enablers. So we really try to take the client end to end. Next slide, please. So as you can see in this slide, there are, you see the map of the world with the 4 dots in Australia and many others across the world as well. This is where we have our ports and terminals and our economic zones as well. Now, again, it's not only wet ports such as, seaports, but we also have a dry port. You see a little dot as well in Kazakhstan, where we manage the rail terminal as well there. So if you were to bring back your childhood memories of connecting the dots, this is really what we're trying to do. We're trying to connect the dots in terms of trade and trying to connect the dots in terms of logistics. So there is really a method to the dots, or method to the madness that you see over here, and we're trying to expand to. So this is where we try to bring people in together, try to bring companies together and take them really not from regional companies to global companies. We're doing it through our port facilities, free zones, trade enablement services, and security services. So I'll explain that in subsequent slides as well. Can we go to the next slide, please? Perfect. So when we talk about the GCC, we talk about the wider MENA or Mysia region, Middle East, North Africa, and South Asia, we're talking about a combined population of approximately 3 billion people. We're connected obviously by sea, by road, etc., to all these localities. And it says here as well, you see the little bubble on the bottom, says we can reach anywhere in the GCC within 1 day. So I really want to put things in perspective for you. So let's say, and I've had constant discussions with clients with regard to this. They wanted to go to a regional country. They're like, so why should we come to Dubai? Or why should we come to the UAE? I mean, I can go directly, for example, to Iraq or Saudi or wherever country, the population centers are bigger. I'm closer to my markets there, etc. Why would I need to come through Dubai? So what we tend to find in a lot of countries is that the customs procedure, for example, takes 1 week, and in certain instances up to maybe even 3 months to clear. For us, our customs procedures takes an hour. The reason is because we invest heavily in terms of infrastructure, in terms of technology, in terms of processes, etc. So this is why clients come to us over here. We're really the gateway for the wider region. Think of Dubai as the Hong Kong of Africa, of India, and of the wider MENA region. Can we go to the next slide, please? So just to give you a brief about our platform in the Jebel Ali port and in the Jebel Ali free zone as well. So we manage the ports and we manage the terminals, we manage the free zone as well. So you would get the licensing from us. But even when your client comes to us, you know, I don't want to just tell them, here's your license and here's your keys to your facility and see you in a year's time when you have to renew. I really want to have in-depth discussions with them to see how I can, you know, dig deeper, how we can help them in terms of logistics. You know, I have many instances where clients come from overseas and it can be very intimidating for them. It's obviously a new market, a new geography. They don't know what to do. They don't know how the procedures work, etc. So this is where we try to take away that intimidation. And I always tell clients, listen, at least if you don't want to go large in terms of having a big factory or big warehouse, etc., start with a beachhead, a small beachhead, an office, a workstation such as a desk, and outsource your logistics. Again, as JABSA or as DP World, we have our own logistical entity that provides logistical services called Smart Solution Logistics. And we have more than 340 logistic companies that can do that. And time again, clients come to us, they dip their toes in the water, they test the market, and if it works, then they can always expand. And this is where we'd be happy to work with them on with regard to that. So we're very flexible when it comes to that. Can we go to the next slide, please? Perfect. So this slide, in my opinion, is very important. So if you see that upside down F, the monkey wrench, is the Jebel Ali port. The A area, the red A, is obviously Jebel Ali North. The B area on the bottom of Jebel Ali South. Then you have the Al Maktoum International Airport. Then you have something that looks like one of the characters on the snakes and ladders board on the side, which is the rail terminal, which is being built right now as well. So again, this is, it's a multimodal form or multimodal logistical machine where you have access to the seaport, access to the road port, access to the airport, and access soon to the rail port, all within a custom bounded area. So imagine yourselves as a trader, you bring your goods and services within Jebel Ali free zone. Now, because they're in the bounds of the free zone, that means you don't need to pay customs and you don't need to pay VAT. And then you have to have an urgent shipment that needs to go out. Again, you can use this infrastructure to do that. You have access to all modes of infrastructure, all modes of transportation should you require it. This is especially important for companies that are dealing in food and beverages, that are dealing in pharmaceuticals, that are dealing in time-sensitive goods. And many companies have used that time and time again. Can we go to the next slide, please? Perfect. So in Jebel Ali, we have what's called a one-stop shop model. So I believe my colleague Hanan was telling you about, the approvals, etc., from Dubai municipality. So Dubai municipality is on our, on the trade enablement platform, which is called Dubai Trade. So Dubai Trade brings together all the relevant government departments and ministries all within a single trade platform. So as my colleague was mentioning, that everything can be done in the comfort of your own home, whether it's in Sydney or Brisbane or Melbourne or whatever it is, that's very true. And same goes for us as well. So you can clear your customs online, you can renew your license, you can apply for visas, you can even make payments online. You don't need to be physically located in JABSA or physically located in Dubai and the UAE to do that. Now, in terms of the product offerings that we have, it's standard. We have the warehouses of various sizes, we have offices, we have workstations, we have staff accommodations. If you have a large facility, that is very bespoke, we can build it for you. So we've done that time and time again, where we've built large custom-built facilities for clients up to their specifications and leased it out to them over a number of years. What's great is that you don't need to fight tooth and nail with your board of directors to justify a massive capex. It's a nominal OPEX. And we're dealing with that as well now, with a few projects in the pipeline. So that's something that we have and we can offer our clients. So really, when you think about it, it is a one-stop shop with regard to trade and solutions. Can we go to the next slide, please? And the slide after that as well, please. Perfect. So I told the business intelligence team just to put together a very brief and bird's eye view of case studies that we have. So when we talk about food and beverages, these are honestly the capabilities that we have, and I believe my colleague from DMCC has been mentioning that as well. So in terms of tea processing, in Jebel Ali Port we have the second largest tea factory in the world. It is by Unilever, by Lipton. And in fact, as I've been told from them, all of Australia's tea actually originates from the Jebel Ali port. With regard to Lipton's tea, all originates from the Jebel Ali Free Zone and port. We have facilities for sugar refinery, grains processing, oil seeds, chocolate, food processing, etc. Again, these things are very important, especially in the days and age of COVID. What's happened, it's actually proved a very safe and a very great bet that we've made with regard to this, because it kept the supply flows flowing with regard to obviously basic necessities such as food. Can we go to the next slide, please? So here you'll see we have a confectionery manufacturer that we're very proud of, that we actually attracted to the Jebel Ali port almost 30 years ago in '92. They have multiple factories and facilities all around the region, but it's worth noting that almost more than a third of their investment regionally has been located in the Jebel Ali port and free zone. Again, the reason is because of the efficiency that we offer them. You know, their import markets, India, Poland, Egypt, etc. You know, we have very strong links with regard to there, and their export markets, we have very strong links with regard to there. The logistical efficiency, the process efficiency, all these things is something that we provide to them, and this is something that they see that's invaluable, whereby they would rather invest with us in a country that is not obviously their country of origin in order to expand and take it forward in the future, and something, you know, that we're very proud of. And this is something that you see time and time again with many, many food and beverage companies. Next slide, please. So my colleague was mentioning as well, Hanan was mentioning with regard to grain, which is a big commodity that is being traded with regard to food and beverage from Australia. And we have the capabilities as well, you know, to welcome them. You know, not only do we handle containerized traffic and cargo, but we also have break bulk facilities inside the Jebel Ali port. We have numerous, you know, mills in the private sector, obviously, that can take the grades and process them. We have many warehousing solutions, whether directly through us, whether, you know, through our sister entity, or even whether through a third party. And we'd be happy to introduce them to you. And even we have the capabilities of reaching the markets it needs to reach to, in terms of Africa, in terms of the region, in terms of India, etc. I mean, just to give you a statistic, 90% of Iraq's trade comes through the Jebel Ali port. Is originating from us. Next slide, please. And this is just a snapshot of the regional demand with regard to food and beverage. So as you can see, the UAE is approximately a third in terms of demand overall with regard to the GCC for food and beverage. And again, it's the nexus of trade connecting Africa, Asia, Europe, etc. I mean, just to give you a brief statistic, you know, it takes a shorter amount of time, for example, to fly from Dubai to Mumbai, which is the commercial hub of India, than it does from Mumbai to Delhi. So just to keep that in mind and keep that in perspective. Next slide, please. And slide after that. So I thought I'd give you a brief of the presence of Australian companies and Australia trade with the Jebel Ali port and free zone. So as you could see, obviously the top 5 imports are dominated by the food and beverage industry. Next slide, please. And trade between Australia and JAFZA has been increasing year on year, something we're very proud of. We have more than 50 Australian companies in JAFZA. However, we're not satisfied with that number, so we hope to increase that as well in the future. These are some of, as well, you can see some of our key clients that we have as well in the Jebel Ali free zone and port. So it's something we're very proud of and something we want to continue. Next slide, please. Okay, this is a very interesting project. So as I was mentioning in the earlier slides that, you know, the connect the dots, one of the first places where we really connected the dots was with India. So with India, we have 13 inland facilities in terms of, you know, dry ports, etc. 6 seaports as well we manage in India, and 2 logistical companies. So just to put it in perspective, we manage 25% of India's trade as DP World as a group. So when a client comes to us and they want to go to India obviously as a market is huge. It's new, and the procedures and all that might be a bit intimidating in terms of how do I get to my final customer, how do I penetrate that market, etc. This is where we take that that intimidation out of the equation. We can take you to your final stop or your final client in India through our network that we have over there, the team that we have on the ground, and the investments that we made over there, and many more as well in the future. Now, again, this is just one bridge project that we have. We have other bridge projects in the pipeline, such as Project Bridge Africa and Europe, etc. So I want you guys to really consider Dubai, consider JAFZA, consider DP World as really your partner in terms of trade for the whole world, and not just here. Next slide, please. So these are some of the countries. Obviously, this is, you know, we're connected to more than 150 ports and do more than 80 weekly services to a variety of ports around the world. Now, this is very important. So you think about it in terms of an airline. You more likely than not will go through an international airport when you travel, whether it's through Dubai International, Heathrow, Hong Kong, etc. The reason is because of the connectivity that it has to the wider region and to the world. The same thing applies for the ports. The reason we've been very successful in attracting clients to us over here, even though their goods might not touch Dubai or the UAE, is because of the connectivity that we have to the wider region. And this is something that we continue to build on, and it took us almost 35 years to get here. And this is something that we're very conscious of, and we keep trying to do going forward in the future. And even with regard to the current situation, with the COVID situation, this is really, paid dividends and paid benefits, because it means that we're open for business. It means that we're connecting the world. And that's something that, we really want to share that story with you. And we hope that to work with you on as well in the future. Next slide, please. And with that, I conclude my presentation. My contact details are there. I'll be happy to receive your emails. And if you're in Dubai, hopefully when the travel restrictions are lifted, it would be great to share a cup of coffee or tea with you. I'm sure my colleagues in the DMCC would be more than happy to provide the coffee and the tea with regard to that. So thank you so much. And we look forward to taking your questions.
Mr. Faisal Jassim, Senior Manager of Sales with the Jebel Ali Free Zone. That was absolutely wonderful, Faisal. I'm so convinced. If planes were flying in a way where I'd be able to jump on one now, I would give my eye teeth to come back and live in Dubai. It just sounds like it's developing so quickly. I think it might have been the comment about the chocolate that got me. I certainly love tea, but you'll never find chocolate in my house because it never stays long enough. But the idea that Australia would get the bulk of its tea, that's certainly something I didn't know. So thank you so much for all of that very, very interesting information. The UAE population of just under 10 million people, it's growing, obviously. It's well on its way to transforming itself into an innovation-driven economy. The IMF projects that the GCC's population will grow by an average of 2.4% annually in the next 5 years to reach 57 million by 2025. Now, as a result, regional food consumption is set to expand at an annual rate of 3.3% between 2018 and 2023. Now, this is really significant for people wanting to invest into that part of the world, and vice versa, really building up the bilateral trade relations between our two regions. To help us to understand the landscape of Dubai and some of the key sectors that are relevant to today's discussion, of course, we're looking at agribusiness trade between our two countries. It is indeed a pleasure to welcome Mr. Al Hinton, who's a Senior Advisor with Dubai DI. Al, welcome to the webinar.
Thank you very much, Jessica, and welcome to everyone in Australia. Good afternoon to you, and to those of you who are in the UAE, good morning. I'd like to start off by recapping something that my CEO, Fahad Al-Rigawi, had said, that we did look forward to coming to Australia once again, as we did back in 2018. However, COVID had curtailed this trip. So we organized this series of Dubai Advantage webinars with our friends at AACCI and the ABC Dubai to ensure that we continue our messaging. So thank you very much for dialing in, and we hope that this webinar will help you understand Dubai a little bit better. Now, I know that there are a number of questions out there. We'll try and get to those online while we're live. If not, please make sure that we have your email address so that we can respond to you individually. So if we can have the next slide and the next one. So we look at Dubai as the city, the gateway, and the hub. And as you can see, the economic diversity of Dubai is quite large. So we don't have a great deal of oil here. Less than 2% of the GDP of Dubai is oil driven. You can see through this slide the various sectors that are very important to the activities of Dubai and its continuing economic diversity. Next slide, please. Now, as Dubai is one of the key areas of Dubai, of course, is our tourism and hospitality. And unfortunately, COVID had a bit of a play on that. And as a result, the numbers coming in this year are going to be somewhat muted. And of course, as Ian Halliday had mentioned earlier, Expo has been delayed by a year. But we do hope that everyone that's online will have a chance to come and visit Expo and see those numbers grow. Next slide. Next. There. Now, Dubai does operate in a very unique part of the world. And as you can see from the map, it stretches out quite substantially. And within a roughly 7-hour flight of Dubai, you can reach 2.4 billion potential consumers. The Faisal talked a little bit about India. The Emirates Airlines and Air India and some of the other carriers have a connectivity to India of approximately 1,160 flights a week between 16 gateway points in India and 3 gateway points in the UAE. So a business person that is launching from Dubai can fly out in the morning, do business, and be home for dinner or tuck the kids into bed at night. A very important thing in doing business from here. Next slide. Again. I mentioned Expo a few moments ago. First time in the MESA region. We expect 25 million visitors to it, with 70% of those being international, and a great theme and very much in vogue today, connecting minds and creating the future, and mobility as a sustainability opportunity. Next slide. The Dubai trade has been pretty constant throughout the last 4 years. And as you can see, it has ranged anywhere from 347 billion to 373 billion. This year, the first quarter at 87.9, and if we multiply that out, hopefully we will end up fairly close to what we had in previous years. We're very bullish on where business is going to continue to be here. Now, from an attraction point of view, you can see that Dubai is ranked 3rd in the world in attracting foreign direct investment, and in terms of both capital flows and the number of greenfield projects coming into Dubai. We also have the world's busiest airport for international passenger connection, with roughly 87 million people coming through. And of course, Dubai it tops the FDI market rankings for destination cities in renewable energy projects. Next slide. So we've launched the Dubai Plan 2021, and it talks about a variety of different areas to ensure that its residents and citizens of Dubai are very happy. We have a happiness minister here, so that culture and entertainment and it's a secure place to live in Dubai. And the way government operates is very transparent, very reliable. It's a good place to do business. I've been here for 7 years now, formerly traveling back and forth for about 12 years, bringing exporting companies into Dubai and helping them with their success. And the journey over that 19 years has been absolutely incredible. And this is a great place to come and do business. Next slide, please. So we're going to talk a little bit about agriculture here, and then we'll talk about some of the other allied programs that we have that come up. So valued at over $5 trillion globally, with the world fresh food sales will rise approximately 13% during this year, equating to 280.5 million tons in volume. And Dubai is poised to capitalize on it with its global gateway status and re-export hub. Faisal spoke about the re-exporting. Saad Al-Awadi spoke about re-exporting as well. So Dubai is targeting also the worldwide halal food and lifestyle market, which is expected to reach $3.7 trillion. And that's a global number. Now, as Ian indicated earlier, there's over 1,000 greenhouses. You can go to the next slide, please. There's over 1,000 greenhouses with approximately 47,000 acres of farms in the UAE. $18.8 billion is the value of the UAE halal market. Another interesting point is 75% of the food waste of the UAE is poised to be recycled by next year. As you can see here, we are globally ranked from a food security index perspective, 31st as of 2018. The Minister of State for Food Security is certainly looking to bring these rankings up considerably more. Next slide, please. So you can see here the various R&D priorities that we have. Agricultural biotechnologies. Somebody who's asked about blockchain. Someone, I believe, has asked about artificial intelligence. We have a whole host of areas in that research platform that we are looking at. Alternative foods. These are alternative proteins, whether it's insects or something of that nature that is being considered. Novel farming. That's your vertical farms, and there are a couple of firms in Australia that I know that are very keen to come this way. The supply chain technologies, robotics, bio-based materials, all very important to us. Next slide, please. Before I go into the infrastructure, I also want to mention the National Food Strategy, Security Strategy 2021 is to champion agribusiness trade facilitation through a whole of nation apparatus. And this is to ensure that food security under all circumstances through enabling technologies, which we just talked about a few moments ago, based production and the supply of food and promoting the international trade partnerships while enforcing the policies which Anand spoke about and the regulations, and to enhance nutritional intake and reduce the food loss and waste. So the strategic direction that we have in that food and ag side, and that part of that security strategy, is the agribusiness trade facilitation, technology-enabled food production, reduce food loss and waste, food safety and nutrition, and food risks and crisis management. And by next year, 2021, we expect that there should be somewhere in the neighborhood of 16,000 new jobs created. And that has a 22 billion dirham monetary impact here. So we are looking to continue building on that effective food security governance model and establishing and implementing a national R&D food security agenda, develop the National Food Security Database, which is very important, human capital, and engage the community to shift the food security notions and behaviors. So part of Dubai, as we can see, to get things moving, we have a huge infrastructure here, a very modern infrastructure. And this is all part of the vision that has the leadership has provided to the economy over many, many years. And this has made us, I'm not going to say void of being void of the coronavirus, but it's helped us move the needle forward. We are a very resilient market. All the highways are fairly new and pothole-free, if you wish. We've got the longest metro in the world. We're currently at 74.6 kilometers. That is being extended right now out to the expo site. Loads of passengers, of course, and a very high-ranked infrastructure growth market. Next slide, please. Now we talk about technologies and smart government. We looked at blockchain, AI, crypto security, robotics, 3D printing, what have you. These are all areas that the government is looking at. And in 2014, the government launched over 100 initiatives. And today, a program is running on a paper-free, excuse me, we're we're running paper-free without having to do a lot of printing. Next slide, please. So someone was asking about blockchain. We eliminate 100 million annual paper transactions, saves a lot of money, $1.5 billion of annual processing documents. The government has executed blockchain in all transactions, and we are the first blockchain-powered government driving the future. Next slide. So artificial intelligence, I mentioned that a little bit earlier as well. And you can see the various sectors that it crosses over. And that also includes the agri-tech field as well. Next slide, please. Green technology, that showed up a little bit earlier in the presentation, saying it's an area of major investment going forward. 13.7 billion has been invested in the 5,000 megawatt Mohammed bin Rashid solar park. A great deal of our power comes from solar. We're coming on to nuclear power very, very shortly as well. Next slide, please. And you can see from this slide how advanced that we are becoming in the UAE and particularly in Dubai on renewables. And the projection is by 2050 to be 75% renewable. Next slide. So science, technology, and innovation. You can see that we're moving forward in a number of different areas. Space has become a big area of interest for the UAE. We put our first UAE-built satellite into orbit last year. We've had one of our own astronauts go up into space, and training is going on right now for additional astronauts. 7-8 years ago, we didn't have any innovation incubators here. There was no VC money to speak of. Today, you can see 1.6 billion in incubators. Dubai Future Foundation and a whole host of others are moving forward with helping startup businesses grow their companies. Academic research centers, that includes R&D in agriculture as well. Tourism and hospitality, I showed some numbers a little bit earlier. A very key sector here are the MICE sector, that's the meetings, incentives, conferences and exhibitions, is a big area of interest for Dubai. And many of you have, I'm sure, attended Gulf Food, which is at the end of January, it's to the end of February. Next slide, please. Banking and finance, and of course, everyone that is doing business in Dubai wants to ensure that they're going to get paid for the transactions. And one thing I will suggest very strongly is that you do look at the contracts and make sure that they have the Dubai courts in them, which is based on UK common law. And that will help you in the event of any kind of dispute. They also have a very strong arbitration center there as well. The Dubai is growing as far as a ranking with the Global Financial Centers Index. And I expect to see that number move upwards this year. Next slide, please. I talked about halal food earlier. The Islamic economy is a very strong and important aspect to Dubai, with just under 400 billion in market capitalization in 2019, presently ranked 10th, and NASDAQ in Dubai at just under $55 billion. Next slide. Faisal's talked about manufacturing, the food side, food processing, a very big area for us as we continue to grow. It's one of the pillars of the plan for Dubai, and we'd love to see more food manufacturers come in, whether it is a packaging operation, sending in bulk product and then breaking it down into smaller products, whether it is ingredients and blendings, that companies are looking at, or whether it is total production. Next. So here are our key sectors that we have for Dubai. Aerospace, the Dubai South Free Zone has an aerodrome out there where the new Maktoum Airport is located, and they have a full breakdown of MRO facilities, executive jets, and so on. Maritime, Faisal again talked about DP World and the port. It's the 9th largest port in the world, and it's one of the few that can handle the supersized containers that handle approximately 19,000 TEUs per container. Pharmaceuticals and medical equipment, we're trying to grow that area. Can you go back to one slide, please? Thank you. We're growing that market, of course, as well for us. Aluminum and fabricated metals. This is the home to Dubai, and one of the largest producers of aluminum products in the world. If you fly on an airplane someplace, chances are that the skin of the aircraft is probably made with the aluminum product from there. Fast-moving consumable goods are another area, whether that's retail products, food and beverage products, big areas. Manufacturing and equipment, obviously we're very keen on that. Please, next slide. I mentioned earlier in the food security, we talked about R&D in Agri-Tech. We have a number of universities in the UAE and in Dubai. There's 32 universities in the Free Zone. Wollongong is located here as well. I'd love to see more universities come in. We've had over 7,200 graduates from the Free Zone universities and in the 26 international branch campuses. So there's a number of campuses here from all over the globe. And students are not just Emirati students, they come from everywhere. Next slide, please. So that gives you a quick snapshot of Dubai. We'd love to see you come to Dubai to help expand your exports. It is a great re-export center. It is a great manufacturing center. It's got a fabulous lifestyle and a can-do attitude. So thank you very much for listening to us. And I'll pass it back to Jess.
Mr. Al Hinton, Senior Advisor with Dubai FDI. Al, thank you so much for that very, very interesting presentation. Just a reminder to all of you who are joining us today that these slides will be made available to you. And also just to let you know as well, the Q&A function just at the bottom of your screen. Coming up shortly, I will be introducing our last speaker for today. And then following our last presentation, we will then go to the Q&A session. I am mindful of the time, and many of you may have planned to be doing other things, bits and pieces. Very fortunately, we've not turned into a pumpkin. We're still here. We've just gone a little bit over time, but indeed this information is so very important and very, very interesting if you are indeed a person who's wanting to develop your existing business, or perhaps you're new and you're wanting to pivot across from one particular market into the GCC region. So without any further ado, our last speaker for today, very, very important, certainly for us here in Australia, because on the 1st of April, our Australian government announced the $110 million International Freight Assistance Mechanism as a measure to restore the critical global supply chains, which have been very heavily impacted by COVID. And we did a survey with all of our AACCI members, and this was one of the most significant issues that people have had, and that is moving freight. So as of this year, Emirates Sky Cargo has been rated as the largest cargo airline in the world. So indeed, it is a great pleasure to welcome Ravi Mirale, the Vice President of Cargo Commercial Far East and Australasia with Emirates Sky Cargo. Ravi, thank you so much for joining us.
Jessica, thank you very much for having me. Good morning to people in Australia, people in Dubai, and good afternoon to people in Australia. I have a few slides here which could possibly be a bit repetitive, and some of you may have seen it prior, but I think I have included it in the presentation basically because it gives a good context to the storyline, tells you of the legacy of Emirates, how we started, our pinnacle point prior to COVID, the rebuilding efforts, and our commitment to Australia. It's a happy story to talk about, and I'll tell you more about it. Humble beginnings back in 1985. Some of us who were associated with starting the airline are still around, and we have very nostalgic memories of this moment. Next slide, please. We are a 35-year-old organization. We started our operations in 1985 with 2 aircraft, primarily serving India and Pakistan. We fast forward to 35 years later. Next slide, please. We have an ultra-modern airline known for its customer service, for the cargo product as well as for the passenger product. Today, we have about 269 aircrafts in our fleet. Pre-COVID, we used to fly to 157 destinations. And by size, we are the largest freight operator. Next slide, please. In our fleet, we have 2 types of aircrafts. We have the Airbuses and the Boeings. At the bottom left of the screen, you see the 11 Boeing 777 freighters. These are the freighters which are being used flat out at this point of time. On the top right, you have the Boeing 777-300ERs, which are great passenger machines. We have 133 aircraft, and we currently are using about 85 of those aircrafts for cargo needs. And it is these aircrafts which actually are currently servicing the Australian market. And I'll talk to you more about it. Next slide, please. Now, a couple of my panel speakers mentioned about the geocentric advantage of Dubai. Dubai, we believe, is in the center of the modern world. 4 hours from Dubai, we cover about 1/3 of the world population. And over a radius of about 8 hours, we can reach China, we can reach the west coast of Africa and the western fringes of Europe, which puts us in a very unique position to enable trade and commerce. Next slide, please. Well, geographic advantage is one of the factors, and people could argue that there are other ports and other cities in the region which have the same advantage. But I think what sets us apart, as very much like what Fahad and Al were mentioning, is the can-do attitude, the leadership with the vision. I think I would go to the extent of saying that this panel here is a good example. We've been operating and we've been presenting ourselves as a Dubai incorporated platform, wherein we have one single common purpose, and that is basically to add value to your business. Next slide, please. Pre-COVID, our business model basically hinged around the fact that our intention was to connect any 2 points on this planet through Dubai. And we had a successful operation where we connected about 157 destinations in 83 countries. And post-COVID, we have a different kind of a scenario, which I will talk to you about in a couple of minutes. Pre-COVID, we had a global penetration, and in terms of connectivity, we covered the 6 continents with multiple departures, not only to the primary cities, but the secondary as well as the tertiary cities. Next slide, please. What makes an airline great is basically the operational excellence. It is very easy to build a network and replicate a network built by somebody else. But what is the cutting difference and the cutting edge between us and the rest, and what sets us apart, is the operational excellence and the commitment of the people. People who are loyal, people who are committed to ensure that customer service is at its best, and they put in that extra effort to keep the difference. Next slide, please. A financial snapshot. In the financial year 1920, we generated revenues of about 104 billion dirhams, which is equivalent to about 40 billion Australian dollars. Sky Cargo as a department generated about 4 billion Australian dollars. At the bottom right, you see UAE revenue of about 776 million dirhams, which roughly translates to about 200 Australian dollars, 200 million Australian dollars. And the reason why I presented the UAE figure is about 15 to 20% of these tonnages are actually re-exported into the region. Next slide, please. Our partnership with Australia has been long-standing. We started operating to Australia in 1996, and we have a 24-year history and a 24-year successful partnership with Australia. We have connected Australia directly as well as via Southeast Asian points like Singapore. Next slide, please. Prior to COVID, we were operating about 91 flights a week to the 5 big Australian cities. These 91 flights per week translate roughly to about 1,000 tons per week of cargo capacity only on the export, and another 1,000 tons per week on imports. So we had an airlift capacity of about 2,000 tons per week into Australia. Next slide, please. Then, in the month of February, we saw a decline in passenger travel restrictions being put. We had to downsize our operations, and we are currently we had to temporarily suspend our airline operations. It was around this time that we decided that we had to step up and ensure that the supply lines and the supply chains are not disrupted. Our endeavor was to ensure that we connect at least one single city in every country we operated and build a cargo network. With a lot of happiness and pride, I say that at this point of time, we now fly into 81 cities across the world, and 25% of the total production which we tend to uplift every year is perishables. Perishables is our forte, right from strawberries from California to mangoes from India and Pakistan to meat and fresh produce from Australia. We tend to carry it all. And we in an organization, next slide please, are extremely focused on products. Our operational processes, our compliance program is geared up for specific products, and we believe that if we are carrying perishables, we have to carry perishables as perishables need to be carried. We can't be carrying perishables like the way we carry garments and shoes. We have robust operational processes, operational competency to handle each of these products to ensure that the integrity of the cool chain is maintained and the freshness of the produce on the retail shelves is enhanced. Next slide, please. For us, Australia is a very important market. On a daily basis, we handle about 285 tons of cargo, import as well as export. In terms of export potential, we uplift about 130 tons per day out of all the 5 ports in Australia. I'll give you a snapshot of all the 5 ports in terms of numbers and the commodities and the destinations we serve. Next slide, please. Sydney, we started our Sydney operations in March 2000. We have a 20-year association with Sydney. We have capacity of about 100 tons per day, and we offer a lift of about 35 tons per day. Next slide, please. From Sydney, we serve markets like Dubai, Hong Kong, Kuwait, Christchurch, and Riyadh. These are generally markets which are very, very perishable centric, and 80% of the total production which we pick from Australia goes into these 5 ports. Likewise, in terms of imports, we tend to see a lot of imports coming in from places like Frankfurt, Chicago, London, Christchurch, and Amsterdam, and these constitute 52% of the imports we bring into Sydney. Next slide, please. In terms of commodity, over 90% of the commodities which we export out of Australia is perishables and fruits and vegetables and meat, which is largely indicated in the numbers we carry. Likewise, imports is more about pharma, it's more about general cargo consolidation, and a little bit of seafood. Next slide, please. With Melbourne was the first station which we started in 1996, and we have a capacity of handling about 87 tons per day, 47 tons of uplift every day from Melbourne to connect to the rest of the world. The important destinations which we tend to serve are, next slide please, Dubai, Oman, Kuwait, Singapore, Bahrain. Again, these are traditionally very high perishable consuming market. We have 2 types of flows. There is one segment of traffic which moves directly from Australia, comes into Dubai and catches the next flight and goes into these destinations. At the same time, Dubai also acts as a very good re-export hub. So there's a lot of cargo perishables coming in from Australia, coming into Dubai. It stays in Dubai, and based on the orders which are received later on, it gets re-exported to these markets. Next slide, please. Again, 95% of that uplift which we tend to have from Melbourne is meat, foodstuff, and pharma, predominantly meat and produce. And these numbers are basically reflective, again, of the operational competence which we tend to have. Next slide, please. In addition to Melbourne and Sydney, we also fly to Brisbane, Perth, and Adelaide. Some airlines do consider them as secondary and tertiary cities and don't offer direct service, but we believe that there is market potential and we were prepared to invest. There was a time when we used to have 3 flights a day to Perth and 3 flights a day to Brisbane, and all these flights would be full of passengers and cargo. And one of the business philosophy elements which we have in Emirates is basically to ensure that we go into markets which are underserviced, we help the market grow, and we build markets. That is part of the Emirates DNA. Next slide, please. Given the fact that Australia is a very important strategic partner for UAE, it was extremely imperative for us to ensure that Australia doesn't get isolated during the COVID environment. And even during these uncertain times, we still operate into Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, and Perth. We got about 7 to 10 flights a week to Melbourne, about 7 to 10 flights a week to Sydney, and 1 flight each to Brisbane and Perth. The reason I say 7 to 10 flights is basically because we tend to have about 7 flights scheduled, and depending upon the demand, we add 2 to 3 extra flights. The message here is, if there's one takeaway message here is, if you have the business, you find the business, we'll find the solution. I'd like to end my presentation with a slide which shows our pre-COVID network and our current route network. If we were to play a game of spot the difference, I think this would be a very difficult game. What we are trying to endeavor here is we are trying to ensure that we have services to support your business continuity. Secondly, Emirates, we would like to do our part to contribute to the air cargo industry. And as the last speaker of the panel, along with the other panelists, I would basically like to be seen as enabler of a trade, and we look forward to building a successful journey with you. Thank you very much.
Ravi, it has indeed been such a great pleasure having you join us on the panel. Thank you so much for all of that. I find it all fascinating. Coming from a journalism background, it's very difficult to not want to interject and ask questions as we go, because there's so many wonderful things that you and the rest of the panelists have shared. So thank you again. That's Ravi Miralay, the Vice President of Cargo Commercial Far East and Australasia for Emirates Sky Cargo. Thank you very much. Now, for those of you wishing to ask questions, there is quite a number of you asking them via the Q&A function at the bottom of your screens. So please do feel free. I am conscious of the time, but we're here. We're happy to stay with you if you're happy to stay with us. I notice that there's still quite a few people with us on today's webinar. So I might just go straight to the Q&A, which is exactly as our schedule is indicating. Very good morning to you all. Well, you may actually be here in Australia. Sharif El Maghrabi, hello to you. Welcome to the webinar. Sharif has a couple of questions. How do you see blockchain applications in agri to ensure consumers about food environment like some multinational companies start to follow? I know Al, you touched on this a little earlier in your talk. I just wonder whether yourself or whether there might be somebody else on the panel, if you feel that hasn't already been answered, perhaps someone might like to finish this question with a comprehensive answer for Sharif.
Well, one of the areas that I see the blockchain application coming in is on traceability of product to help reduce the risk of pathogens and other concerns that people would have in the quality of their product. So that's one of the areas that I see blockchain coming in. Hanan from the municipality may have a couple of comments in here as well. I know that Sharif has another question here on untouchable products, logistics, new tech. I'm not quite sure what he's referring to there, and perhaps we could have an offline chat on that question a little bit later.
In terms of blockchain, I can maybe answer a little bit.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it's extremely important, as you said, Al, and we're, as I mentioned earlier, we're setting up the Crypto Valley in DMCC, which will look at all this and attract companies from around the world who have solutions. One of the in a comparison for that question, there's various different sectors looking at it. So coffee, for instance, coffee obviously has a shelf life once you open it, and I know Nestle has a very clever blockchain system to track the different batches of coffee to the client, and the client actually can see it as the time goes down to when they have to use it by. So it's becoming very common to use the blockchain for this. And also, as Al said, responsible sourcing in terms of diamonds. You see the diamond producers now going into blockchain development to give traceability to all of the diamonds, because consumers these days want to know exactly where the diamonds have come from, and that they're clean and not and responsibly sourced. So I think across different sectors, we're going to see a lot of development in the blockchain space.
Thank you so much for that answer there, James. Really do appreciate. Just in terms of the second question, untouchable products, logistics, what, unless there's somebody on the panel who's able to answer that now, I think Al, you had just mentioned a moment ago that you're happy to take this offline. Is that where we want to go with this question?
I think that Jessica, I think that's probably a question that should be taken offline to find out a little bit more from Sharif what it is that he's referring to when he says untouchable products logistics.
Sure, right.
So I think Sharif is already connected with me on LinkedIn. So let's take that question a little bit further. Okay.
Fantastic. And a very warm afternoon welcome to Raymond Najjar. Hello, Ray. Ray's there in South Australia. He's made a statement here now that South Australia is lifting lifting the GM ban, I'm presuming that's genetically modified ban from its grain production. Will this impede our exports to the GCC countries? What a brilliant question. Do we have anybody on our panel who is able to talk about the UAE regulations? I certainly know that issues around the use of hormone, GM foods, it is something that the region is quite sensitive to in some countries. Would somebody have an answer for Ray in this regard? No? I
think Hanan from Dubai Municipality would have a more wider background on that if she's with us.
Hanan, are you still with us?
Yes, so basically we do have a standard for non-GMO. So that's a GSO standard followed by all countries in the GCC. So in regards to the regulations changing in Australia or not, food importers need to be aware of the regulations currently in place here in the region.
Okay, and Hanan, could you just advise, do we see those, do we see changes coming into the UAE, or are the regulations remaining the same as they have been?
With Dubai Municipality being more of an executive department, and in the term that, you know, we are the ones carrying out these regulations, and the regulations being issued by the Emirates Authority for Standardization and Metrology, such as AACCI. So I would recommend that traders be in touch, keep updated with their website to view the latest standards. As far as I know, there are no new regulations regarding GM foods at the moment. But again, it's always a good idea to be updated and to regularly have a look at the AACCI website.
Thank you very much, Hanan. So the AACCI website, would you have that available off the top of your head? Would you be able to share that with us?
Yes, so it's www.esma.gov.ae. I can write it down as an answer to that question.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Hanan. Very much appreciate that. And I think, Ray, that may answer your second point here. Ray makes the point very importantly. Again, grain has been mentioned, so it's critical to know the rules regarding GM. And of course, going back a couple of weeks ago, we saw the Chinese government overnight impose an 80% tariff on our barley exports. So of course that prompted a significant reaction from the Australian government, which is where a lot of discussion around the idea of placing all your eggs into one basket has essentially come from. Certainly developed, it had been around for a little while, but certainly that idea of the 80% tariff which will be in place for the next 5 years. So some significant pivoting happening at this very point in time. So understanding what the regulations are there over in the UAE in terms of grain and GM is very important. Thank you, Ray, for bringing that very important point up. Hello to Ahmed Al-Haji. Hello, Ahmed. Thank you so much for joining us. This is a question to Faisal. Faisal, can you please elaborate with an example how you can assist in penetrating India, for example?
Sure thing. So that's a great question, Ahmed. So as I mentioned earlier briefly in the presentation, you know, India, we have 6 ports over there. We have 13 inland facilities, and we have 2 logistical companies, and not to mention the army of people that we have there. So India, just to give you a brief, India in the past, so as obviously a global organization, probably Emirates would be the same as well, we have regions, right? We have Asia Pacific, we have Africa, Europe, etc. So India in the past was part of the Asia Pacific region. However, because of our heavy investment in India and because of the depth that we went to in India, India is its own region. So we have the India region. We have a dedicated team on the ground there. So Ahmed, if you are interested in India, please, you have my contact details. Send across your queries and I'll be happy to put you in contact with the team directly in India, and they can assist you with whatever needs to be required, whether it's from the port perspective, from the logistical perspective, warehousing perspective, you know, customs clearance, etc. I mean, they'll hold your hand with you until you get to your end consumer in India. And even vice versa, it works on the flip side as well. If you wanted to source something from India, I'll be happy to put you in contact with the team over there, and they can assist you with that as well.
Faisal, thank you very, very much for that. I am very conscious of the time. We've gone half an hour over time, but I just want to send a very special thank you to Sharif. How lovely of you. Sharif has sent a message through saying, thank you so much. You've enriched my mind. It is one of the most informative sessions I have attended in the last 5 years. That is such a lovely thing to say. Thank you, Shukran Jazilan, Sharif, for joining us. And thank you very much to everybody for joining us, and indeed, most of all, to our panelists who have been able to enrich all of us in this very important first of a 4-part series. Hello to Achala. Achala is asking, how may I collect these presentations? Achala, we are making these presentations available to everybody who has participated today. If you would like to reach out to us at the Chamber, you can do so by emailing at info@ostarab.com.au, and we can certainly help you out in that regard. Now, to be able to provide our closing remarks for today, Carl Darling, who is a very dear friend of us here at the Chamber. He is the chairman of the Australian Business Council of Dubai. Without any further ado, I would like to hand it over to Carl to offer our closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jessica. And it must be noted, a very warm thank you for your hosting of the session today, which was, I believe, the inaugural virtual trade mission for Dubai FDI. I've had the pleasure of joining Farhad and his team on a previous trade mission to Australia, just coming up 2 years ago. And I think that the message is still clear, but COVID has really taught many Australians that leveraging the relationship with China too heavily exposes you to too large a fall if COVID is to repeat itself. So I would encourage any attendee today that wants to look further at establishing presence in Dubai, or at least just do some groundwork at extending their operation to this region. Look into it carefully, absolutely look into it, because there is a lot of opportunity, not just in the UAE, it's the Middle East, and as rightly identified, into the subcontinent. I've commonly used the Australian term that Dubai is the bouncing pad for this region, as it's very easy to set up. It's very easy to put your feet on the ground and start even a small operation, but it exposes you to the large region around us and many of the opportunities within. So definitely don't let the plans go astray. Look into it, and if you would like further information, then we have fantastic contacts from today's seminar. But first and foremost, I have to say thank you to AACCI for always spearheading the trade mission, the virtual one this time. A lot of work goes into it. I also have to say thank you to Lisa from the Australian Business Council for helping put the session together, and of course all of our attendees. You've hopefully brought a lot of information to Australian businesses that will at least let them look a little bit further, and hopefully bring them out here. It's a bit warm at the moment, but for the majority of the year, it's quite pleasant. It's nowhere near as cold as it is back home right now, especially for someone from Adelaide.
Carl, thank you so very much for joining us today and for giving us our closing remarks there. Very much appreciated. It's always lovely to connect. I understand that Saadat Fahad Al-Gagawi, if you're still with us, I understand that he may like to say a few closing words. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you for calling us Saadat. I think it's closer to the Datos and Malaysian, but humbly, yes, I am Fahad Al-Gargawi. I'm thankful to everyone being here, all the participants who stayed with us and who were with us at the beginning, and everyone who participated from the colleagues, fellow speakers, and at the same time, very appreciated all the effort been done by AACCI, been done by the Business Council, the Australian Business Council in Dubai, and everyone putting this together. Don't go very far. We are still on round 1 of 4, and hopefully we are there to really connect and reconnect in such time, but continue connecting both countries and Dubai to really support businesses to grow in our region. Thank you to everyone participating. Thank you to Dubai team and everyone putting that. And hello to Carl, haven't seen you for a while, but we are here. So I just want to make it short and thank you all for being this and hope to see you soon.
Your Excellency, thank you so much for joining us. And to all of our panelists, thank you very much. As Sharif, one of our participants, has said, it has been incredibly enlightening. And we're so desperately in need of these conversations at the moment because, as we all know, the world really has changed. It really is a new way of thinking. So these conversations help to plant the seeds of what tomorrow is going to look like. So very much appreciate everybody's participation. Thank you everybody to your questions. If we haven't been able to get to them, please don't hesitate to get in contact with us, and we will indeed ensure that your questions get through to the correct people so we can indeed enrich your experience from today. I do want to send a very special hello and a special acknowledgement to our President and National Chairman, who is also the Honorary Consul to Morocco, that is Roland Jabbour. Hello, Chairman. It's lovely that you've been able to join us today. I understand he's been with us today. Also, our General Manager, Adam Phillips. Hello to you, Adam. A very special thank you to him for all of his work on this. And, of course, Mohammed Haj, our National Treasurer and New South Wales Chairman, a gentleman who needs very little introduction in the United Arab Emirates. He has done some extraordinary work on the ground there, and in fact many of you may be well familiar with the Mates Help Mates hashtag. When we had the dreadful bushfires here in Australia, there were a number of Emirati alumni from Australian universities who came out here to Australia with Oz Relief, and Mohammed was absolutely instrumental in having all of those wonderful Emirati volunteers come out here who went into some of these disaster zones to just help mates. So indeed, a special mention there to Mohammed Haj, who is very well known on the ground there in the United Arab Emirates. It would be very remiss if I weren't to recognise the engine room, those who are doing all the work behind the scenes to make this first of the four-part series a great success, and that is Lisa Milai, who is from the Australian Business Council of Dubai. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you very much. Barbara Haggerty, who is our National Events Manager and also our Victorian Executive Officer. It is always a pleasure. She is always the engine room behind these webinars. Al Hinton, again, Senior Advisor with Dubai FDI, who's also been one of our panellists. Thank you so much, Al, for joining us. And of course, last but not at all least, and that is Carl Aris, who is our National Communications Manager and our Queensland Executive Officer. And he's also, as I fondly refer to him, as our technical guru, managing all the technical behind the scenes. So thank you very much to all of our fellow colleagues at each of the organisations, that is Dubai FDI, AACCI UAE, and of course to all the team at AACCI. Thank you so much for joining us. Do tune in next week. If you haven't already received the email, you should receive it before tomorrow, and that is for logistics opportunities in Dubai. This will be the second of our four-part series. So we invite you to join into that webinar Wednesday the 17th of June at 4 p.m. And as I say, if you haven't already received that invitation, you will indeed receive that by tomorrow. We do look forward to your participation. Thank you again very much to all of our participants and indeed to all of our panelists. Thank you so much. Shukran jazilan. Salam alaikum. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you
very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.